Hello. In today's lesson, we will introduce the topic of the subconscious. So, why the subconscious? Let's start by asking ourselves this question. Why are we really in this world? Do we question this? I mean, are we here just to pay our bills, take care of our children, go to work and come home in the evening, watch Netflix or YouTube in our spare time? Or do we actually have a greater purpose? Are we on a journey to complete ourselves? Are we on a spiritual journey? When I wrote my first book, in other words, in the book What Am I actually asked myself this question. What am I? While trying to understand myself on one hand, on the other I was asking, what am I? Why am I here? What makes me different? I questioned myself like this. Now I'm asking you, have you ever asked yourself this question? What am I? Why am I here? Is there a particular reason for me to be here? Let's take a look at history. What have great sages and thinkers of the past said about this? They've always given the same message. Know yourself. Knowledge is to know knowledge. Knowledge is to know yourself. If you do not know yourself, what is the point of all this reading? Perhaps Yunus Emre summarized this knowledge in the most beautiful way centuries ago. Because the path to knowing everything starts with knowing yourself first. But what does it mean to know yourself? At the entrance of the Temple of Delphi, it says, know yourself. Sages, teachers, and Sufis have all said, know yourself. But what is the essence of this? What does this mean? To know yourself is to recognize yourself. It is to be aware. It is to live with awareness. And the path to knowing yourself starts with observing yourself first. Let's say, for example, I told you, go examine that house. What would you do? First, you would go to that house and observe it, right? The same thing applies to us as well. To know yourself, you must first observe yourself. That's why Sufis, sages, and enlightened people have sought the truth not outside, but within themselves. Because truth is not something outside, it's something within us. As Hacı Bektaş Veli also said, the redness is in the fire, not in the pan. Dervishhood is in the head, not in the crown. Whatever you seek, seek it within yourself. Neither Jerusalem nor Mecca is found in pilgrimage. Look, for centuries people have chased after things, struggled, but in the end they've realized that both the journey of self-discovery and the destination to be reached are actually within oneself. On my own journey, this was the first truth I realized. I should look not outside but within myself. When I look at myself, what do I see? First I see my mind, then my body. But what truly governs me, what makes me who I am, is mostly my subconscious. That's why knowing yourself begins with understanding your subconscious. And this is such an important thing that if a person doesn't know how the subconscious works, how it operates, how it is used, and how it can be changed, they cannot achieve lasting change. Without realizing it, they become attached to things, become dependent, and try to change. But because they don't know why or how, they can't change. Sometimes we experience things that seem completely absurd. We can't even give up our simplest habits. We ask, why can't I change this? We ask ourselves this question, or we feel hesitant to speak in front of people. We can't make sense of it. Why do I get so nervous when I stand in front of 3 people? Why does my heart race when I talk to a woman or a man? There is no logical reason for this. But why does it happen? Because it's your subconscious that's doing this? And if you don't understand how the subconscious works, you'll never know how to change these reactions. That's why knowing yourself starts with knowing your subconscious. In this lesson, we will delve into the details of the subconscious, both from a scientific perspective and with examples from everyday life. When we talk about the subconscious, usually an iceberg comes to mind, because this is one of the best ways to explain the difference between the conscious and the subconscious. An iceberg has only a tiny part visible above the water. The main mass is hidden beneath the surface, a structure that is perhaps 10 times, maybe 20 times larger than what is visible. And what keeps that tiny part above the water is actually the massive section underneath. In the same way, we think that we manage our lives with our conscious decisions. We say, I make the decisions, I choose, I handle things. But in reality, the true force that governs us, shapes our decisions, and determines whether our lives get better or worse is the vast system working beneath the surface in our subconscious. And interestingly, most of us go through life without ever questioning this system. We ignore it and sometimes even dismiss it as nonsense. Yet by looking only at the visible part of the iceberg, we cannot understand the whole picture. The real power lies where we cannot see it. So why does the subconscious exist? Why does the human being, unlike other creatures in nature, have such a mechanism? Remember this. When a human is born, unlike many animals in nature, they are completely defenseless. They cannot survive on their own. Someone needs to take care of them, feed them, and protect them. Likewise, their consciousness is also undeveloped. In other words, they cannot make their own decisions. That is why nature has created an incredible system to ensure our survival before consciousness develops. The subconscious. The subconscious exists to keep us alive from the moment we are born, and for this, it records what it learns from our environment. However, there is an important point here. When we are born, the subconscious is like a blank notebook. It learns how to survive, how to deal with challenges, and how to respond to difficulties from those around us. And here, a critical question comes to mind. So are the people around us the right people? If the people who shape our subconscious are intelligent, conscious, and solve problems in a healthy way, then our subconscious copies these healthy models as well. But if these people are the kind who sweep every problem under the rug, yell and shout at the slightest argument, and throw things around in anger, then our subconscious accepts these behaviors as solutions too, and applies them in our lives. So, the environment we are born into is incredibly important, but is this fate? Is it unchangeable? Of course it can be changed. But we need to know that the subconscious copies the codes it receives from its environment exactly, and if we don't change them, we continue to live with those codes. So why does the subconscious resist change? Because the number one priority of the subconscious is survival. For it, the greatest danger is uncertainty. For the subconscious, pain is equivalent to death. That's why it tries to keep us away from pain as much as possible. It doesn't matter if it's physical, psychological, or emotional. The moment it feels pain, it sounds the alarm. But this is exactly why the subconscious doesn't change easily, because it considers what it is used to as safe. In fact, even if what it's used to is bad, it doesn't want to change them, because it thinks that something unknown could be even more dangerous. But sometimes changes happen on their own. How does that happen? For the subconscious to change, two things are needed: intense physical pain or intense emotional or psychological pain. In other words, if the subconscious truly reaches its pain threshold, it changes on its own. For example, think about the frightening images on cigarette packs. For most people, these aren't enough to make them quit, right? Because the subconscious sees those warnings but doesn't perceive them as a threat. But the day the doctor says, if you don't quit smoking, you'll die within a year, that's when the subconscious steps in and says, I have to change this. I can't cope with this pain. It says, or let's say you've been in a relationship that's made you unhappy for a long time. Deep down, you know it's hurting you, but still, you can't leave. Because the uncertainty outside scares you. What if I never find anyone else? What if I end up alone? You suppress that pain by saying this. But one day you reach a point where you just can't take it anymore. That's when change happens. Because the subconscious says, I can't endure this pain any longer. And it forces you to get out of that situation. We call this point the pain threshold, and a person only truly changes when they reach their pain threshold. There's a story. I really like it. A man was walking down the road. He saw a dog moaning in pain. He asked the owner, why is this dog moaning in pain? He said. The owner replied, because he's sitting on a nail. Well, he asked, why doesn't he get up? The owner said, I guess it doesn't hurt enough. That's exactly how life is. Most of us complain about something, but we don't take action, because we haven't yet reached our threshold for pain. But one day comes and we reach such a point that we have no choice but to change. However, if we wait to reach our pain threshold for every change in life, we lose our most valuable asset. So, what is our most valuable asset? Time. When we lose time, we can't get it back. That's why anyone who embarks on the journey of self-discovery should get to know their subconscious and learn to change themselves before reaching their pain threshold. This is what I want to tell you. Please think about this, and on this journey, ask yourself the following question. Will I wait until I reach my pain threshold to change things, or will I get to know my subconscious and learn to change without suffering? The choice is yours. By the way, please don't watch these videos like you would a regular YouTube video. Please don't approach it with the mindset of, let me just watch it, finish it, and move on. Think about what I'm explaining, because the goal is not just to watch, but to understand and internalize. If you first reflect on these things yourself, you will naturally convey this knowledge to the people you coach. I myself have participated in many online programs as well. Just as you are attending a training, I also join trainings every week on topics that interest me. But I never just listen and move on. I pause the video and reflect on it. What have I experienced regarding the pain threshold? I try to find similar stories or experiences in myself. Then I internalize it, and only after that do I move on. That's why, please, instead of just watching and moving on, try to find the reflections of these things in your own life. Have I applied this in my own life? Have I experienced such an event in my relationship? Has something similar happened in my family life or at my workplace? When you reflect on it, this information will truly settle in and be recorded in your subconscious. Do you know what one of the biggest mistakes made today is? How many books did you read this year? I read 100 books. I finished 200 books. It doesn't matter how many books you read. Sometimes you read a single sentence in a book, internalize it, and learn more from it than from thousands of books. How many books you read, how many books you watch, how many courses you complete. These are actually a kind of chauvinism, an illusion of self-improvement. What matters is not what you read, but what you understand, and then not just what you understand, but what you truly comprehend. Today, everyone already knows everything, but how many people actually put what they know into action? Look, we may not realize it, but capitalism turns you into a consumer, even when it comes to things that are supposed to help you grow. It sells you books, courses, education, but it doesn't care about this. Did you really learn? Did you apply it to your life? What matters is not finishing a book quickly, but internalizing it, digesting it, and bringing it into your life. Please do the same for this video as well. Don't try to rush through it. Pause, think, watch it in segments. Simply select the method that best fits your individual needs and preferences.